RV life. A lot of people look at RV life as something to strive forward to. And I've been doing it for 18 months now. And really, there is a lot of really cool things about RV life. And then there's a few things that you won't like. So let's go through a few of the things that you don't like. And in the meantime, I'll get you a list of the things that I do like so that you can appreciate them as you're going through it. One of the first things is storage. You don't get to have a yard, a bench, unless you're in a more permanent location. So if you're traveling around, those bays, that's what you have. That's where you get to put things. Inside your RV is all that fits. And then along with storage, after you conquer the problem with storage, then the issue becomes weight. Because the more you put in there, the more likely you are to exceed the weight of your RV. And that becomes a very serious problem if you're not watching it very closely. So you have to balance what you're putting in versus what you have room for. And then you have to balance what you need versus what you want. Now, I'm lucky enough to be here at a semi-permanent location where I can show you guys the setup that we have, where I can even got a little mower there where I can mow the grass and everything. But when I travel, there's a lot of this that stays behind and I don't get that benefit of having it. Now, the next thing that is a real pain, and this becomes a pain only after you've been doing it so long, and that's that line right there. When you have to empty your tanks constantly. And what I mean by constantly is this is every 3 to 4 days, depending on how active you are, you need to empty your tanks. You can't just open the lines and let the water run out, because the liquids may run out, but the rest of it's just going to build up in your tank. So you have to close these tanks. You have to let it build up to 80, 90%. And then you have to open the tanks. And you have to do this every 3 to 4 days. At least in my case, it's about every 4 days. And if I wait 5 days, then I end up with the tanks getting almost full. So that's really the big problems here. The third problem is going to be this right here. Power. You're constantly struggling to connect with power. Now, I have a bit of an advantage. I have 3,700 watts of solar on the roof. So it gives me a little bit of an advantage to be able to deal with power on the run. And I don't know if I can get that up there high enough to show it to you. And even if I can't, I'll have the drone fly over at this point and show it to you. Now, that's the downside. That's where you really run into things that you don't like. And being a little bit close to your neighbors, I don't understand why they stack us on top of each other at these parks. And I'm assuming it's because the expense would be so enormous if they didn't, that we wouldn't want to stay there because it would cost too much. So that's kind of the really the downsides. Now, there are some wonderful sides also. And one of them is if you don't like your neighbors, you just get up and leave. If you don't like where you're staying, you can be gone in an hour, in less than an hour most of the time. And so if you realize you've pulled into a place that's not safe, you can be out of there as quickly as possible. Now, there are some other distinct advantages, and that is location. You can pick some of the most beautiful locations to go to, and you can see things that you've never seen before. You can eat at different restaurants every night if that's what you're really after. You can roam around small towns all over the place, and you can basically live in your RV. Now, some things you'll have to do to make sure that you have reliable ties to the world. You have to deal with your mail. I still have a permanent location that I can send my mail to, so it's not a problem for me. But a lot of people have to have their mail forwarded to them if you're on the road for long periods of time. You have to deal, obviously, with the cost of paying for different locations. You get better deals if you are looking at doing it for a week or a month. But like here, I get a wonderful deal for staying longer term, and I am month to month. And then there are lots of other advantages where you can go out and do things, and you can move around and do stuff in different parts of the country, and you can follow the weather, which is wonderful. When it's beautiful in a place like this, you can be here, and you can go where the nice weather is and limit your need for electricity and water and those utilities that really limit your ability to move around freely. Now, are there some other big advantages to it? Yes. I like the fact that no matter how messy the house gets, in literally an hour, you can clean the entire house up and you can have everything ready. Now, that also means the downside is that your house isn't really big enough to have guests over a lot of times. If they do come in, they're sitting, right in the middle of where you live every single day, and the living spaces are relatively small. So you got to have to deal with that. You also have to explain why there is a foot pedal on your toilet instead of a handle. And you have to kind of explain how that works. And then that always inevitably brings up questions. Then there's the obvious question of perception. Living here looks like a dream to everybody. But when I turn around and they find out that you're living here and you remove the water from the scenario, they ask you, how do you like living in a trailer park? And I'll tell you, living in a trailer park is no different than living in a house. There are RV parks that are sleaze bags owned. They have a lot of the wrong element. They have a lot of long-term tenants that are really bad. And then there are RV parks that are very well maintained. The owners understand what it's like to be on vacation and understand that. The crampedness of the facilities is managed well by them, and that allows you to deal with that type of a problem much better. So it all comes down to where you're staying. That's no different if you're buying a house or you're living in a house. If you're living in a house that is in a bad neighborhood, then you're going to have exactly the same problem. You're going to have the bad neighborhood, and it doesn't matter how big or how nice the house is, it's in a bad neighborhood. If you're living in a house that's in a nice neighborhood, or if you're living in an RV that's in a nice neighborhood, that's in a nice RV park, then you're going to get it there. The best part that I can say about this is it allows me to travel around and see things and do things and work remotely that I've never been able to do before. Internet is a key element to our life these days, and I have purchased the Starlink on Roam. The roaming feature, or mobile feature, I guess if you want to call it, allows me to take the Starlink and move it around as I move around, and there's no additional fees. Now, it does run about $180 a month. It's pretty expensive, but it works, and I have high-speed internet of 200 to 300 megabytes down and 10 to 15 megabytes up. Now, is it the same as a cabled internet connection? No, but it's pretty close. It's not perfect, but it is really, really close. So that's one of the elements that you can wipe off a slate. I tried using cell phone networks and that kind of stuff, and just the reliability of them drove me crazy. The Starlink has been much more reliable in being able to work from home, work on the road. I often travel on the weekends, work during the week, and most people that I work with have no idea where I am in the country, what like this is outside, or what is outside. They have really no idea. It allows me to go visit beaches. The solar system allows me to work off grid for days and days and sometimes weeks on end. So there's some advantages there. So the simple truth is that there's big advantages and disadvantages to it. Some people hate the idea of living in a very small confined space like that, and I get that. Over a period of time, there are a lot of aspects of that confined space that have really began to annoy me. Having the space, having all the rules around where I'm living and what I can and can't do. If I want to be able to put something in the yard, you'll get notification of you can't have that out there or whatever. Those type of things are very annoying. If you're living in one of those parks that's well maintained, you should get those notifications. If you're not, then you may be able to get away with a lot more than you would in some of the other parks. The fact is that there is no fix-all solution here. Some people do this so that they can go camping and want a very small RV so you can spend some time out there. Others do it to live, like I have done for the last 18 months, live in their RV. It's much more difficult to do, and some of these things that don't bother you at first, they do begin to come back to you as you start to live there longer and longer. Some of them, like emptying the tanks, don't bother you if you're only going to be doing, traveling for a few weeks. But if you're traveling for months on end or a year, you've been doing it for a year, it does begin to be a little bit more troublesome. And it's not a big thing, but the maintenance on all of these items does start to weigh up after a while. The constant repairs are something that is also very annoying to a lot of people. I don't mind doing constant repairs, working on something. I'm like that in my house. I would do exactly the same thing there. I'm constantly repairing what I have in my house and fixing it up and doing that kind of stuff. So if you're not a handyman, or you're not a Mr. Fix-It, or you don't want to deal with the slides not working right, the water pump's not coming on, you don't have enough solar power, you need to find an outlet, you got to find a place to drain your tanks, you need to you don't have a place to sit, you have to use instead of having something nice and fixed like we have here with this bench, you may end up with a little chair like that, and you have to unfold them. Every time you move, you have to pick up all this stuff, and you have to put it in your RV, and you have to have the weight to support it. So these are the type of things that you have to take into account. There's a lot to it, and there's a lot of advantages. And every aspect of it, the many aspects of it, I love. And there's a few aspects of it that I don't like. And that makes living in a house sometimes really convenient, where you can go in and you can move home for a little while and live in a normal house with normal running water and not have to worry about, well, I've only got 10 gallons of hot water. How long can my shower be? Do I have the hot water turned on? Do I have enough power to provide it? Do I have enough gas to run the stove or the oven? Washing and drying your clothes. Where am I going to wash my clothes this time and dry them? I'm fortunate enough I was able to put them over here in this shed while I was here, but when I'm traveling, it still becomes an issue. So all of these things they're minuses, but there's also a lot of pluses. Location is everything, and all of the stuff that you want to do, you can do while you're traveling, and you can work at the same time. And there's a lot of places that can provide you with revenue or income based on working remotely like this. So I encourage you to give it a shot and give it a try. I don't encourage you to just jump in, buy yourself a giant fifth wheel, and decide you're going to go on the road and stay there for the next 5 or 6 years, because it is not the same going for a weekend as it is going for a permanent trip and staying in your RV. I suggest that you try it for an extended period of time. Rent an RV for a week or two and stay and move a couple of times during that time, and stay in places that you would normally stay in. Don't give yourself the benefit of the doubt of, oh, it's only for 2 weeks, I'm going to spend the extra $50 on a place for the week. Stay in the places that you would be able to normally afford, and do what you would normally do. And understand that when you're traveling and you're doing it on vacation, you are out and away from your RV from day to day, and you're off doing something fun, or you're off swimming, or you're off in the ocean. When you live there, you're not doing those things. So make sure that you test it in a real scenario where you're doing what you would normally do. I'm not saying you can't enjoy yourself while you're out. I'm saying make sure that before you make that commitment, you understand that there are some downsides to it and what they are. I've highlighted a bunch of them here. If you have questions, please send them in the notes below. My name is Matt. I travel a lot. I'm going to be moving back home for a little while, and I thought I would start putting together some of the things that I learned while I was on the road. I'll be glad to answer your questions. And I've included some footage while I was recording this of the park from up high, and the drone, and different things. So hopefully you've enjoyed all that. And if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll see you on the next video on the road, hopefully.